Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Tara, and we are going to talk about Quantum Leap Episode 1, and technically 2. This is called Genesis, and it is the pilot of the classic original Quantum Leap show, which began in 1989? Oh, is it? Is that right? Yeah. So we'll get into this as a two-part pilot, and as the introduction to our characters, mainly of Sam and Al, who are really our only two recurring characters. Well, as far as I know, anyway. I mean, maybe there'll be some surprises later, but at least right now, as far as I know, it's just them. So obviously, we kind of were trying to pick something to do when we finished Babylon 5, which we're not actually quite finished yet. But the reason why we're doing this now, and partly why we picked Quantum Leap, is because there's a new Quantum Leap, and we were reviewing that. And now that it's on its break, we're going to cover old episodes until the new one's back, and then we'll switch back to that, and then we'll switch back to the old one when that's off again. So pretty straightforward. We should have started this like 2 weeks ago, and the only reason why we didn't is because Tara got sick. So it was just easy
I got the COVID, and it affected my voice.
yeah, Tara couldn't speak, so it was easy to just say, okay, we can just start this a week or two later and go from there. Easy enough.
Yeah.
So we're here. We're going to talk about it and get into it. Now, obviously, there'll be spoilers for this episode, but we won't spoil future episodes. Isn't that right, Tara?
That's correct.
Yes, but we should point out that Tara has seen the entire show before.
Twice. I've watched it through twice.
Twice? You only watched it for the first time
this year.
Yeah, I was going to say, you only watched it for the first time earlier this year.
Yeah.
Needless to say, you like it then.
I love Quantum Leap so much.
Well, that's, if nothing else, you've got one extremely positive voice guaranteed.
Yes.
Not that I'm expecting to be the negative voice, because I'm looking forward to watching it, but at the very least, you know Tara's going to be praising it to the high heavens as much as
always, every episode, even the bad ones.
Even the bad ones. Don't do this. Don't do this Star Trek logic you've got where all the episodes are a 10, even though there's entire shows of Star Trek that everyone universally agrees are bad.
I don't know which one of those could be.
I'm not even going to get into it. The audience knows what I refer to. It's okay. So, yes, Quantum Leap, simple premise. Well, it's not that simple, but it's simple enough in essence. Is you've got Dr. Sam Beckett, who is jumping from person to person in different time periods. And the rules, I don't think it's actually brought up in this episode, but the rule, just generally speaking, going forward, is going to be that he can only jump to a person in a time period where he himself was alive. So he can't go I don't know what year he was born, but he can't go beyond that
53.
year. Is it 53? Oh yeah, but
they say it in this episode.
It does. It comes up. You're right. It does come up in this episode. So he can't go before 1953. He can't go after presumably 1989, because that's when he started jumping at the start of this episode. Well, I don't actually know that for sure. Given that he's born in 1953, I'm going to assume it's supposed to be 1989 in the present day.
It is not.
It's not.
No, the actual project, I think, takes place in like 1996 or something.
Okay.
It's only a few years in the future.
Sorry,
it's
okay,
not too much.
All right, okay, that's interesting. So, it's not like, it's not like a silly twist where it's like, oh my god, it's 2045. Or,
yeah, it's not like that.
Okay. All right, so it's a few years. It's the near future, effectively, then. Which is funny, because the opening of the episode does try and make it look super futuristic, and it's like, why does this look so futuristic? This is like 1989. What are you doing? But even if it's 1996...
in the 90s, they just knew that, light-up shoes were going to be very popular, which was true with children.
With children, not with stilettos.
Not with stilettos.
But light-up earrings and the prototype car that Al has, because our intro to the show is Al. It's Al being a ladies' man, and...
It's good that you established that right away.
Yeah, almost being cancelled. Like I thought we were going to have to cancel Al in the first scene, but he saved it, because he pulls over this woman standing by her car that's broken down with her light up shoes, and he leans out, and the first thing he says is, he looks her up and down and goes, "You know what I'd like to do?" And there's a pause, and I'm like, oh god, are we going to have to cancel Al like immediately? And he's like, "I'd love to fix that flat tire for you." I was like, oh, you saved it, Al. You saved it. Don't get me wrong.
He's so smooth.
There was some suggestive tone to the way he said it, but But,
I mean, she was like presenting herself also on the side of the road.
oh yeah, this is basically like a scene from a porno. This is like they're both
Totally,
ready to go like immediately,
Yeah.
which is fine. It's of its time, and that's whatever. But it's to give us a sense of him before we go into the stuff with, because the only thing we get with Sam in present day is just one shot of him standing in the chamber and like the smoke that's coming up from the floor. Oh, it's so intense it almost looks like fire, like surrounding
Yeah, it
him.
looks like blue fire.
Yeah.
He's wearing the Fermi suit. It's like just a white onesie. His hair's blowing. He's smiling all big. Gushy is yelling. He's leaping. He's leaping.
Yeah, there's one other character yelling that he's doing it, and then then we just go into the episode. Well, actually, we get a very Back to the Future Part 2 style opening titles, which I assume is just for the pilot, and this is quite normal for pilots where they've not made the opening title sequence yet, so the pilot just gets like a more general like titles coming up over a background. It's just like a shot of this. It's basically meant to be like this is like his soul or whatever leaping. Like, this is like traveling through time to get to his person.
I thought, I don't know how much of the episodes, because some of them seem kind of late, like in the intro that I got, where it showed some episodes like not just from this season, but I think from the second season, which doesn't make any sense unless it was redone after, or I'm just misremembering the order of the episodes.
You could be misremembering, but season one's so short because season one's only like 8-9 episodes, something like that. It's entirely possible they'd already started shooting season 2 before they actually make the title sequence.
Maybe.
Because typically what you notice in a TV show is that all of the clips in season 1's title sequence, at least back in this era where they actually had clips, because they don't really do that anymore, is that you would notice that they're all from the first like 4 episodes, because that's typically how much they shot by the time they had to make their opening title sequence.
Yeah, and then there's like a re-edit of the opening title later on in the season.
Sometimes they just wait till season 2, and then you'll just like season 2. Then I'll have like all of season 1 and a few of season 2 episodes to play with, so you get a more varied selection and so on. But yeah, it's like they're flying through the sky, and it's like it goes down into the house where like the character is that he's going to take over. There's a nice little touch here though, just to show that there's like a time element, because you wouldn't necessarily get that there's time travel happening here, but when it goes into the bedroom, the clock clicks back the way to just before 5 o'clock when the alarm goes off, and then it clicks back up to 5, and then that's when he wakes up. So it's showing that time is reversing in the clock. So it's just a simple little thing, just to tell you there's a time element here. It's not just that he's traveling through space. There's something else. And then we get introduced to the character. There's a lot of internal narration that we get, which I was not expecting. That's very different from what I've seen in the new show.
Well, it's also not something that lasts.
Sure, it's just like an early, yeah. I'm not surprised to hear that, but it is very interesting that we kick off that way. And it did make, like, if I'm going to like make a sort of small critique of the episode, is that it's very wishy-washy on what he does and does not remember, because the first example I'll give is that there's a moment where like, he wakes up and he's like, it worked, and he's like, wait, what worked? And it establishes, okay, he can't remember much, right? He's got some like lingering feelings, but he doesn't really know what he's talking about. And he's like, oh, there's a woman that I'm next to, and she's pregnant. Oh God, what's happening? Like, who is this woman? Who am I? And then he goes into the shower and he looks in the mirror and he sees like someone else's face. And my first instinct was like, well, how do you know that's not your face? You don't remember it. So it's not a big deal, but it was like a little thing I thought. I was like, well, how do you know it's not your face?
I mean, he probably has some inkling to know that that's not him. Like, it's not a familiar face in the mirror, or maybe he knows a little bit about what he looks like.
It may. I mean, they established that he remembers one phone number, and he remembers his. Does he remember his first name, or does that come to him later?
Yes, I think so. Or Al definitely calls him Sam when they finally start talking to each other.
That's right. Yeah. So.
But he doesn't react like, Sam, that's my name. He does kind of react like, oh, you know my name.
Yeah.
So maybe he does remember it first.
You could argue that's ambiguous though. Did he already know it, or did he just like hear it there, kind of thing? Like, you could sort of read it both ways if you wanted to. Mm-hmm. But
did you like the episode?
Oh, that's what you're waiting for. You're waiting for me to say if I liked it or not. I did like it. I do think this first episode is a little bit really slowly paced in places, and part of that's probably just because it's it's a two-parter, and the main leap is spread out over an hour long of the 90 minutes, and there are times where I feel like it was maybe lingering a bit. But what I will say, so obviously I've seen this first 8 episodes of the new show to compare it to, so I'm coming at this with a slightly different perspective.
Weird. It's a weird perspective.
Yeah, but I will say 2 things. One, the tone feels a lot more grounded and very different to the new show. It feels less light, and part of that is that you get to spend more time with him interacting with these people. Even though there are some little cheesy things here or there, like there's a part of the narration where he says the boogeyman's coming, like made me laugh out loud because it was such a silly line. But the other thing that I'll say here is that this episode was far more convincingly set in the 50s than any of the episodes of the new show were of their time periods.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's
felt
very
like fair criticism of the new show.
He felt like he was in the 50s. I felt like it nailed that vibe, like almost instantly. It just felt right.
Yeah, I think this episode's kind of interesting, because I've watched the series now twice, and, it's always fun to go back to the beginning when, they're still trying to figure out what the show is and stuff. And if Belisario and his productions, like, he seems to be a military guy, right? Like, he made Jag, and before this he did Airwolf, and I think even Tales of the Gold Monkey, I think that's what it's called. I haven't watched it yet though. But I think that inspired the show Tailspin. So I think that one also had a pilot involved. So I think this is just very much Belisario is very comfortable in this type of storytelling, because there's a lot of plane stuff in this that, it feels like a war episode almost, like you're watching Top Gun or something, because there's just so much plane stuff in it.
Yeah, he's a test pilot, and the plot revolves around, but
there's so much detailed plane stuff in it.
Oh,
too.
Yeah. Well, there's also a lot of stock footage. They clearly had access to a lot of stock footage for the plane stuff as well. I mean, there is some special effect shots for specific things they need the planes to do, obviously, but there's a lot of shots of just planes flying around. It's like, okay, especially now because you're watching it in HD and it's nicely remastered, the show looks really good, and then it cuts to this extra grainy footage. You're like, okay,
yeah, it's kind of off angle or a little bit shaky, like a handheld cam.
It's like that's clearly came from a different source. So fair enough. So no, I like the show. I like the characters. I do think there's definitely some shakier parts of the characters that I think are going to be cleared. Obviously, I know that Al is going to be this ladies' man. He's going to have this reputation. But I was almost distracted by the implications over the course of this 2-parter. How many different ladies he's already been with in the course of this one episode. And I don't mean from his past. I mean, over the course of this episode, it sounds like he meets and sleeps with at least 3 different women.
There's Tina, which he picks up on the side of the road, and Brenda from coding. He hooks up with at a party, I guess.
And isn't there someone...
I kind of imagine it, the scene in RoboCop where the New Year's party's happening and he just sort of wakes up for a moment and all the scientists are making out with each other. That's what I imagine is happening over at the project.
And then there's also someone he meets at the Lakers game because he's at a baseball game.
Yeah, you're right.
In fact, it's one of my favourite moments of the episode because they're in the plane at this point, and Sam turns and goes, well, at least you didn't spend the night with her. He's like, well, I did. And Sam just sort of turns and glares at him. And he's like, all right, what do I do next? Really gritting his teeth. I thought that was a really funny moment. I think the weird thing about that, though, to look at Al's character in this, because he's really charming because he's Dean Stockwell. He's got 1 or 2 weird line deliveries, but it's a pilot. He's finding the character, the writing's finding the character.
Yeah.
There's
They're trying to push this one line to be his catchphrase, ain't it a kick in the butt?
Yeah, he says that twice.
But it doesn't stick.
There's a line in the opening scene where the woman asks about the car, and he sort of turns and goes, it's a experimental model. And the way he delivers that line just felt so weird. It was like, Dean, I know you're a good actor, but that was not a good way to deliver that line. I don't know what the director was telling you, but
he's trying to be mysterious, like James Bond,
Oh, okay. So what I will say though is the way he's portrayed in this episode, I think for a certain point, it almost feels like he doesn't care that much about Sam, because the way he just saunters in and out, and compare it to Madison in the new show, which I won't say too much about. Addison, sorry. See, it's been off for 2 weeks and I've already forgotten the character's names. Right? Where obviously she really cares about Ben and really wants to help him, and it's the first thing in her mind. Whereas it feels like helping Sam's an inconvenience as he's plowing as much ladies as he can, from coast to coast.
Look, he's got his priorities, and ladies are at the top, and Sam's like right underneath, But yeah, sometimes Al's a little late, and it's frustrating to Sam. Obviously, like, it's a very different dynamic than the new show. Yeah,
I think I'll accept this after a few episodes. I think it's weird that he's literally just made this leap that no one was expecting, and he's already feels like he's like, oh, he's showing up late and doesn't care. I've got a hangover. This this phone it in kind of attitude. It's weird that he feels that way right after the surprise leaps happened. Right, at the start of the show. It feels a bit weird that he's already at that point. But I'm not saying that he's not entertaining.
These project people are not. They need Underwood Hudson there, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but that's not to say that I didn't enjoy the character. I didn't think he was charming, or I didn't think he added a lot to the show, especially once, like, because the first couple of times he appears, he just kind of stands and waves, or, and he's in a tux, so he kind of sticks out in the location that they're in because they're at like an air base. But once they actually get to start talking together and interact a bit more, it's a little frustrating at first because you won't tell him anything, but it does actually make for a really sweet moment towards the end when he's leaped and he's in the baseball part of the episode. There's a moment where, like, he knows his first name, he knows his name's Sam, but he's really down and he's upset that he's not went home and the leaping's not worked. And I think because Al's such a non-caring, seemingly, I don't necessarily think he doesn't care, but like, he comes across very nonchalant and he's always caring about something else, and this is, can he come into work and help you? And
this is just his job.
Yeah. But I think that actually makes this moment extra sweet though, where he's not supposed to tell him anything, but he just says, F it, your name's Beckett, your name's Sam Beckett. The way the camera kind of tracks into Sam's face as he sort of, like, and the music plays, it does actually feel like a really sweet special moment that he knows his name again. And Al gives him that. Al actually gives him that moment. And I think this friendship that they have, or is going to re-blossom because he doesn't remember him, so it's going to be like a new thing for Sam, I think will be... It does feel like it's already going to be quite sweet, because it does feel a little bit like it's not there yet, but the fact that it's starting to, like, come together, even just by the end of the first episode.
Yeah, well, they have such great chemistry, like, from the get-go. And they're very different characters, they have obviously very different priorities, but I don't know, there's just something about, maybe it's just because Dean's such a good actor, and, like, you pair him up with somebody like Scott Bakula, who is a good actor, but he's really good as Sam Beckett. That the relationship between the two of them is just, like, from the get-go, it's just great.
I think the reason why they work so well together, and this is again based on one episode and just generally what I know of, like, particularly Sam as a character, I know he's like this good person who and even at the end of this episode, like, there's not a lot of it in this first double episode because obviously he's just in shock and trying not to die and so on and so on. But there is a little moment after this part of the episode where at the end of his story he says, maybe this quantum leap thing won't be so bad. Maybe I can do a lot of good doing this. So this idea that he's kind of like a Superman-esque character. And all I mean by that is that he is good. He's inherently, he is neutral, heartfelt, earnestly good and wants to help people. And I think the idea of having that with a character like Al, the idea that Al maybe can't be that good himself, but the idea that he can help Sam, like, achieve what he's trying to do, like, even if he'll never admit it, he's kind of getting to, like, do good for the world through Sam and being a part of that process, like, he kind of, like,
so he's allowed to live in sin outside of the project.
I mean, yeah, kind of.
It all balances out.
But I think that's what gives it the potential, at least from my perspective, because I've not seen the rest of it yet, but potentially I can see how this is, like, this romance, for lack of a better term.
It's definitely a bromance, yeah.
What this might develop into, especially since this is all he has. Like, this is the only person Sam can talk to and confide in and be honest with, because everyone else doesn't. And we see the effects of that in this episode. He tries to tell the wife of the person he's inhabiting, and immediately he has to backtrack because she just starts getting upset because she thinks her husband is losing his mind. And, that's all it is. So yeah, no. So even though there's some shaky elements, like as with any pilot, like, I can see the seeds for it, but I can definitely tell that some of this stuff's going to be more solidified as we go on, and it'll work more naturally, probably, I'd assume, by the time we get to season 2.
Yeah, and because it's a 2-hour episode where you're really with Sam the whole time, and from his perspective, like when the emotional stuff happens at the end, I think it's really quite effective.
It works.
And even honestly, like even the relationship he ends up building with Tom's wife and stuff is really good, like really emotional stuff, or at least you really care for her, you know, like you believe that Sam is also falling in love with her by playing the role of the husband during this time.
Yeah, I would say
and he is still respectful. Like he says like, oh yeah, like although I guess he finds out that he's into pregnant women.
No, he doesn't. No, he doesn't. He says maybe I am, but like, no, I think it's just her. That's the joke.
I know. Oh, well, yeah, we'll see.
Don't be teasing future things. You're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to tease future episodes.
I'm not. It's not a tease. Yeah. I was gonna make a joke about like just him having a new tab open on his Pornhub when he gets back.
Well, Pornhub didn't exist yet when he left, so he doesn't know about tabs and Chrome.
You're right.
The internet's just a flicker in his eye at this point. So no, I agree to a point. I think it works well enough for the episode, but I find his personal stuff, you know, phoning his father, I think that is way more effective than anything with the wife. Like anything with the characters that he's with in The Leap, I think the stuff that matters to him specifically on his own works more. And I think and it's not even that I think it's even necessarily the best written ever. I think it is, a lot of it is down to his performance. I think his performance when he calls his dad, and I think it's the 70s we're in the baseball part of the episode. Maybe the late 60s, something like that. It doesn't really matter.
Probably
that
the
much.
60s, I think.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter that much ultimately, but you know, because basically he has like these moments early in the episode where he wakes up on the second day and he's like, "Oh, well, you know, I'll get up soon and milk the cow," and he's like, "Wait a minute, milk the cow? Oh, I must have grew up on a farm." And he starts to like remember like fragments of his family, and he remembers that his dad died in like 1970 something, and he's like, "Wait a minute, it's the 50s." Like, like he's still alive, and he wants to call him, but he doesn't remember his name or the number. So he's like, "Well, shit."
He tries. Like he works with the operator and is able to remember, you know, where it is, but he has no idea how to contact them still.
Yeah. So, and obviously, once he gets his own last name, he's able to, you know, put the full thing together and do it in the end. And it's a quite a heartfelt moment. It's really good.
The music's really good too.
Yeah, it all works really well. I think the last like 15-20 minutes of the episode are probably like especially good. Like that's where all my favorite stuff kind of happens, which is good because it means that it built up to something, and I felt something at the end because of it.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean the last 15 minutes or so is because you get a leap, but it's like literally the shortest leap in the whole series because it's just establishing like, okay, now that he's done with this is what we can expect. He's not going home. He's going to go to another leap, you know, and that's what the show is establishing, that each episode will be a different leap. Yeah,
that's actually what, like a modern show that's having a double pilot that knows it's going to be split in two for syndication would have done the jump at the end of part one so that when it was split in two, it would function like the later episodes, kind of.
Yeah.
But this didn't do that. This is like, no. Our story, he jumps here, and it's just the last little chunk of the second part where he's going to be in the baseball part of the episode, which is fine. All solid stuff. So to get into like some of the leap itself, so he's this test pilot named Tom. He's got a pregnant wife and a son. And obviously we get his reactions to everything, and the realization that he's in the 50s, although he doesn't even really know that he's not supposed to be in the 50s at first. It's kind of like something feels off about this. And then obviously as time goes on, like I think Al says something about the technology. He's like, that didn't exist in the 50s. But wait a minute. Why, how can I say that? Because I'm in the 50s. That's a weird thing to say. But, you know, we get introduced to, like, his captain or his superior officer, his best friend, who's also a test pilot. And a big part of what it really plays with is this idea is like, wait a minute, I'm not really a test pilot. I can't fly a plane. I don't know how to do that. So there's a lot of stuff in this episode where it's actually kind of funny how the first person he ever leaps into has a reputation apparently for doing like so elaborate practical jokes that anytime he says he can't fly or he's acting weird, they write it off as Tom's up with a kidder, you're always setting up a gag, you like.
Yeah, I think it's also interesting that this isn't brought up by Sam, but like when he had excuse me, I just had a coughing fit, but when he like is with his other squad or whatever they are for the other Top Guns, they're talking about like they're with the doctor and they're saying like people who go Mach 2 or 3 have been having memory loss issues. Like that's just a thing. Like people are remembering things incorrectly when they're up there.
Well, no, isn't that something they set up with him though, just as a practical joke? Because he says it to his friend, Bird Dog or whatever his call sign is, and it then cuts to he's saying, "Oh yeah, we'll do that. We'll tell our superior that." And the superior, by the way, is the captain from Time Cop. I don't know if you noticed this.
Yeah, it's Oh, I can't believe I forgot his name.
I don't know his name. I just know he's the captain from Time Cop.
Yeah.
I recognized him instantly. I was like, oh, that's him from Time Cop.
Yeah. He's got one of those really friendly faces and voices.
Yeah, Bruce McGill. That's his name.
Bruce McGill. Yeah. Of course, I knew him. Well, no, I think because one of the things that happens is that when they're first flying and someone else goes and tries to do the Mach 3, and but the fuel starts boiling, and then he tells Sam later on that like, hey, when I was up there, I smelled coffee. But he didn't smell coffee. He just heard it because he remembered it wrong. They bring this up, like the memory loss thing. I think it's Bruce McGill that brings it up. That it's been a common thing. So I don't know. Maybe I misremembered, but I thought that they were establishing that is a thing that could occur. Is that there's
I don't think so, because
short-term memory loss.
No, it cuts straight from them in the car where the friend says, "Oh, we should tell him that as a practical joke," and it cuts straight to a meeting with the superior where all the test pilots are all given examples of things they've forgotten. But it really, because I watched the episode twice, and it really felt like in the second time this was just all that, like they all think this is silly Tom wanting to set up a gag.
Oh, okay. I guess I just misremembered that.
Yeah, and so I think they're all just like saying this to like, because they make up this test for him to do later on, which, and then they start like the superior says, oh, obviously it's a gag because of the answers that Tom has filled in, because when Sam fills in this test and it's like all these obscure questions about his past, he answers them honestly, which I guess says that he does remember quite a lot about his real life, because they're all stuff from his time, his own upbringing, because he mentions mini skirts in the 80s or 70s even, and he mentions pantyhose, and a couple other things that I forget, but he talks about renting a video or something.
Yeah, microwaving popcorn and going to a video store. Yeah,
and these guys are like, this is science fiction, what's this guy talking about? Oh, that stupid practical joker, can't trust him with it. And
yeah, you're probably right then.
Yeah. The coffee thing's right though. Yeah, the guy does say that he can smell coffee. He's like, no, he couldn't smell it, he could just hear the fuel boiling.
The percolating sound.
Yeah, which led to an explosion, which they do a couple of cool things with, because they establish early on that this is quite common because they're test pilots, that the ship's, or the plane is going to crash, and there's like a scene early on with all the wives like come running out and like they're all scared, but then they see like the parachute and they're like, oh, okay, the guy survived, so right, yeah, that's okay,
unless he had a goose moment where he hits his head coming out.
Yeah, but there's a nice like payoff later when Sam does his, where, and it's just one of those things where I could see it coming. I knew they were about to do it, but that just made it effective. Is that it focuses on the explosion of the plane and the debris falling out the sky, and I'm sitting watching, going, he's going to land in the foreground. That's how they're going to reveal he's okay. He's going to land in the, and that, sure enough, that's what happens. He lands in the foreground, which is not a critique. It's a good shot, and this is what they should have done.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it was really nice. But yeah, everything down to like the wardrobe, the way they're dressed, the way the hair's done for the ladies, especially, like all feels very 50s. Honestly, the kind of inane conversations the ladies are having when they're together also was very 50s. They're talking about the stretch marks and how their cactus cream is like.
Yeah, she's really excited about the new shaving cream because they have cute signs on the road and the roads don't have stripes. Yeah, there's a lot of It's a lot of little things that make you go, this feels like somebody, it was written by somebody who lived through it, you know? And remembers it well.
They're calling, but, and maybe that's the genius of saying that you can only go back in the last 30 or so years, is that a lot of the people writing the show grew up through these eras, so they can actually reference things and know exactly what's different about the present day and that era. Whereas when you've got the new show, and it's fun that you can go back to the Old West, but it's like, yeah, none of us were alive when this happened, so no one has the memory.
Also, I think that was part of the pitch of the show, was like, don't worry, we're not going to have all these expensive sets for like Roman times or something, or
yeah. But don't get me wrong, I get why they've changed it for the new show, because they might as well do some things differently and expand, because why otherwise why do a new show? Like, if you're just going to do the exact same thing, it'd be pointless. So
well, I mean, yeah.
So absolutely, but like, I think that's part of the charm of this, is that this felt very authentic, and that the people writing the show who are maybe in their 30s and 40s and 50s, like, they remember the 50s because, you know, it's 1989. You know, most of them probably remember growing up, at least as kids. You know, they remember being a kid back then. So that's really nice. So no, that's good. Yeah, I like that one when he says there's no lines at the side of the road. And she's like, what? It's like, I was thinking it'd maybe be easier to see the road if there was white lines at the side. And she's like, oh, that's a good idea, Tom.
That's a really good idea. Yeah.
Oh, I've got them sometimes, you know. Or when he calls himself a nerd, and like 10 minutes later, she's like, Tom, what's a nerd?
Navy talk.
Yeah.
Or maybe not Navy, Air Force. I think they're Air Force.
Yeah, this will be Air Force. I mean, some pilots are the Navy because they obviously have planes on the ships, but
yeah, I always think Top Gun.
Yeah. But there is such a thing as the Air Force, so there's definitely Air Force separate from the Navy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so no, actually, one of the little writing things that I really liked, I thought was a really smart little touch, is it's right after he wakes up and he's thought of his dad and he tries to call him, but he can't because he doesn't know the name of the number. It's right after the end of this scene where the son, you know, Tom's son, walks in and says, hey dad, are you sick? We can cancel our fishing trip if you want. And I love the idea that because he's just like been remembering his father and he's trying to contact his father and he's not been able to get a hold of him, that this son asking, hey, it's okay. And the son's been quite nice, actually. He's like, hey, it's okay if we cancel this trip if you're sick. And he's like, no. And I think the line he says is, nothing cures a cold quicker on a fishing trip. But I love the motivation that because he's just been trying to contact his father, who he feels regret over, and we sort of like get revealed throughout the context later why he feels regret. He's like, no, I'm going to be a good dad to this son. Even though I'm not really his father, I'm not going to spoil this kid's weekend with his dad.
Well, he doesn't really know what the experiment is going to be too. And you know, Al has warned him that you could be Tom forever, you know, for the rest of your life if this doesn't go well.
Al's first guess is that they have to go to the center of a nuclear blast, and that might snap him. But he's like, no, we're not. First of all, that would probably kill Tom. Let's put that in there. Like, Tom would be a dead man if they did that plan.
I mean, he's just spitballing ideas.
Yeah, and there's another nice little tease actually as well when at one point Sam says, whose brainchild is this, yours? And he's like, no, it's not mine. And like, you get instantly it's Sam's. You get that this is his own fault.
Yeah. Al does not have a very good poker face.
No, I appreciate that. And the whole thing with his dad as well is that you know, he pretends to be like his dad's uncle's son, I think was the exact split up, but he's basically talking to him and he's sorry that he can't come home because he's pretending to be a young man who's either in college or just out of college, and clearly he feels guilt that, because we find out in the episode that Sam has 6 doctorates, I think it was, and that clearly implies that he was a very devoted person when it came to his career and his like science goals and all that stuff, and that he was probably missing a lot
very busy boy.
He was probably missing a lot of Christmases and Thanksgivings. And basically what he hears from his dad on the phone call is like, hey, if you're a young man and you're trying to make it, you know, find out who you are and like do what you want to do, your dad will understand that. I know I would. And you know, that's kind of like so it tells you why he needed this, you know, like why.
Yeah, it's almost like his dad kind of knew. Maybe he did feel empathy because his actual son has the same adult voice.
Oh, well, yeah,
that's the
okay.
voice he's talking to on the phone.
Well, yeah, well, to explain that, he is dubbed, that at the end of the scene, young Sam walks in and he's like 13, 14, but he is dubbed with Bakula's voice. And it is
like adult grown-up voice.
It's a little, Do you know what I think they did? I think they watched Superman, because in Superman this famously happened where Christopher Reeve dubs the teenage Clark Kent's voice. It works a little better because one, he's a little older. He's not quite as young as this kid. But he also does kind of speak slightly differently as well. It's Christopher Reeve, but he's sort of like intentionally doing like I'm a younger Christopher Reeve when he speaks.
There are very talented voice actors that can do that, can
Absolutely.
channel like a teenage version of themselves and be able to, just mimic it. But most people, I think, don't.
Yeah. Scott Bakula, I mean, and I get why. Like, maybe you can be trained to do this, but it's for one scene. So I get why it wasn't like a priority.
Yeah, you'd be like higher pitched, or something, or just get a kid to do, to talk kind of like Scott Bakula, or at least just say the lines. And then once his dad calls him Sam, you're like, okay, we all get it. Like, it's not like we needed the voice in order to confirm that it's the same person.
No, but that's the thing. It doesn't have to sound like Sam. If a 14-year-old walks in and they just call him Sam, I'll accept that he sounds different. It's fine.
Yeah.
It's never been a problem, but they dub him. There's actually some awkward dubbing in the opening scene as well with the woman who's clearly dubbed.
Yeah, she's dubbed by the co-creator, which is Belisario's wife. I can't remember her name. I could see her face. Are you looking at IMDb?
I mean, I am, but I'm seeing the actress who played her, not the voice.
Deborah Pratt.
I'll take your word for it. She's not. I mean, she's probably quite low down this list because she's just the voice of an actor rather than.
Well, she would be credited as narrator.
As narrator? Why would narrator?
Well, maybe there is no narration in this scene in this episode except from Sam, actually. But she's normally the narrator for every episode. But in the beginning.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, this is not like she isn't narrating this. Dubbing's not narration, but I have to see what you mean.
Yeah.
Later episodes,
normally she's like she does like the setup for the show. Like, if you're just tuning in, here we go.
Oh, okay. She's the opening narrator. Okay. I get you. Yeah. Well, I'm sure she'll be in later episodes then, but she's not in the episode 1 cast list.
Yeah, she's actually she's an actress too, so she does appear in an episode, I think, in this season. And,
this is starting to sound a lot like Mrs. Roddenberry on Star Trek.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I think her and Belisario met on another show that he worked on. But yeah, I guess they just didn't like the woman's voice, so wanted her to be more sultry, and Deborah Pratt has a very sultry voice, so they just dubbed her.
Well, at least according to the show's creator anyways. Like, honey, you've got a very sexy voice. Why don't you do it?
I think she has a very sexy voice. Yeah. I guess the actress wasn't cutting the mustard.
Yeah. Well, at least it was that way around. It'd be worse if he said, "Oh, honey, you sound great, but we're going to cast a prettier actress to play the visual role, and then you can dub it after." That would have went down very differently in the household, I think.
Yeah.
She said, "But I wanted to wear the light up shoes." But yeah, no. So yeah, I think all of that stuff is good. Like, I think the core Sam stuff where he's emotional about calling his dad, and then has this sort of like, you know what, maybe I can do some good. So it kind of sets up a mission statement for the show and a mission statement for the characters. Like, you know what, if I'm not going to like solve this anytime soon, and we've got 5 seasons, so it's not going to be anytime soon. He's going to make the best of it and do some good. And I kind of love, because at the ending, because one of the things that I said about the new show, and easily is going to apply to this show, and like however they're going to handle it, is this idea that if he's like miraculously very good at a lot of things he shouldn't be good at. I do kind of love that this sort of like winning the baseball game, it's not because he hits the ball, it's not because he suddenly makes one miraculous great shot, although I would have been okay with it if it's like, okay, he got lucky and hit the ball like once great, right? I'd have lived with that. I love that he wins the game at the end in this little leap towards the end of the episode.
Like a technicality,
because the catcher fumbles and drops the ball, and the visual in slow motion of Alec point, go, you can
go.
And then like everyone they throw the ball to keeps fumbling it, so he just gets a home run out of sheer stupidity.
It's kind of a weird leap anyway, because it's like, what is this life altering thing that he has to do? He has to win this like minor league team because he's retiring and so is the coach, and they just want to end on a win. Like,
yeah, it's like a small little one. Yeah,
it's a very it's not like the other one was like, no, you got to save the life of this child and save the life of Tom.
No, this is low stakes, this one. But I think what I like it is that, so the core concept of the show where he has to fix something in each leap to leap forward into the next one, right? That's set up here, and it's something that Al's very skeptical of. He's like, well, Ziggy said that, you know, you may have to fix something, and whether that's...
I can't remember his line. I think he says, like, it's a bunch of hooey or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's whatever. I don't believe it.
Yeah, he doesn't believe it. You know, he says, you know, whether it's like God wants you to do it, or like the universe, like fate, you know, whatever you want to call it, whatever entity is it playing and in control, like it wants you to fix something, and that'll make you leap. That's a theory that Ziggy has, which obviously that is the premise of the show. That's what we're going to keep doing. I kind of like the idea that this ending with the baseball game kind of feels like it's like, yeah, fate kind of stepped in and let him win this, like, because this was nothing he did. He just kind of is handed the win, and it's kind of silly, but it's kind of like magical, and it's almost like he earned it because he's because no, on a sort of more thematic level, he's earned it because he's decided to do good. He's already made the conscious choice that he's going to try and help whoever he can, however he can. So.
And he's feeling like so good after being able to talk to his dad, and he sort of gets closure in a way, because, you know, one of the things he says, like, you know, I just don't think my dad knows how much I care about him. And he's like, look, I'm talking to you now. If he's anything like my son, like, I know, like, you don't feel this way about your dad without them knowing it. Don't worry.
Yeah. He gets closure. And I think this is just like, you know, fate stepped in. And I love that Al's surprised at it, because Al... It's established that he likes baseball because he was at a Lakers game, and that's why he was late for one of the things.
Well, I mean, he calls it a ball game, but Lakers are basketball.
Sorry. Yeah, you're right. Did he say Lakers?
He said Lakers. He also referred to it as a ball game. He was at a ball game.
You're right. I think it's because when someone says ball game, I assume baseball. I think that's what I associate ball game with. That's my mistake. I mean, I knew Lakers were basketball if I stopped and thought about it, but you're right. I think maybe in my head I thought he said Dodgers or something. I don't know. But anyway, he you know, so okay, like sport then, right? Whatever. But like, so but I think his surprise where he's like, this isn't that big a deal, but I watch the game anyway. He's like, you're never going to hit this, whatever. I think that's why his excitement when the guy fumbles the ball and he's like, go. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. I like that moment. It was funny.
Al's history is I don't know. It might be a bunch of bullshit, like, because he'll just like he might just say things to reassure Sam, like, don't worry, I got you. I used to be an astronaut, but he might actually used to be an astronaut. But I think like some of the timeline stuff doesn't really work out.
I think I took that at face value because it sounded plausible that the reason why he's involved in this project is because he's an ex-astronaut. That made sense to me. But
yes.
There could be other things that contradict this in future episode. I don't know, but
yeah, I mean, I don't know. He says a lot of stuff. He's kind of like Sam, where Sam like has these multiple diploma or degrees or doctorates.
Yeah,
even. Yeah,
it's like 6 doctorates.
All the D's.
He solves a pregnancy crisis. You know, the mother goes into early labor because she's so worried about him dying.
He teaches her Lamaze. Nobody knows Lamaze yet.
And yeah, they all react to the breathing. Yeah, you're right. But then he's arguing with the doctor, and he's like, no, like we can just like stop the labor. He's like, yeah, sure, miracle man. How do we do that? Some alcohol. And they're like, wait, what? I just might work. This crazy bastard. He's done it. That son of a bitch, he's done it.
Yeah, how'd you know this? You know, pre-med? Tom.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. Yeah, like, I mean, they at least acknowledge that he's special because he says, Time magazine calls you the next Einstein. So at least, okay, we're establishing that he's like a super genius, so we can accept some of this stuff. But I do appreciate... But
at least he's a good person.
Sure, no,
they don't usually go hand in hand.
But I do appreciate that when it comes to the test pilot stuff, he's terrified of doing it because he shouldn't be able to do it. He's terrible at it the first time he tries because he almost crashes the plane. Because he basically...
I love that scene. It's shot really well where the plane just kind of starts slowly tilting and stuff, and the music gets a little like comedic note to it.
Yeah, but I love the setup of it though, because internally the narration goes... well, at least I don't have to fly because the other guy's got it. It's just fine. And then his friend goes, all right, I'm gonna go take a leak. You've got the controls. And he just stands up. And he's like, what? I think that's like an ad break. You could tell what the ad breaks are.
Happen,
yeah. But like, yeah. So we come back and he's like, tilting the plane, and the guy on the ground's like, any problems up there, number one? You're looking a little bit kablooey. And still his friend thinks it's just a gag. Oh, you forgot to fly, lol. We didn't say lol, obviously, because it's the 50s. We don't know how to say lol.
No. They don't even have the word nerd yet.
I know. This is one of these weird things where, and I think this is part of the authenticity, is that I would never have realised that nerd wasn't a common word in the 50s. But hearing her react and say that made me go, oh yeah, I guess it isn't. So
yeah,
that's having people who grew up to that time is what gives you that moment, because I would have just said, yeah, no, that sounds reasonable. Yeah, when it's all the greasers and like the 50s style high school kids, I could imagine them saying nerds, but clearly no, they didn't.
No, I think Garrett Graham credits himself as playing the first computer nerd on screen in Demon Seed.
He wasn't that nerdy in that movie.
He had the pocket protector and like the greasy hair and everything.
Okay, but he didn't act that nerdy in it. Come on.
No, he's too attractive.
Maybe I just think Garrett Graham's too cool to be a nerd. But I'm not going to say attractive. I'm not as demented as you are, but
what?
Let's just say you've got some rose-tinted glasses on when it comes to certain people. Garrett Graham being at the top of that list.
He is at the top,
yes. So, yeah. But no, I appreciate that. This is what I was trying to get to when we started talking about this play stuff. I appreciate that the ultimate plan is like, okay, taking off and landing are the two hard parts of flying, right? Now, I can help you, fly. I can help you even take off. The plane kind of does part of it automatically because it's an advanced enough plane for the time period. But you'll never be able to land it. It doesn't matter. No matter what, you cannot land this plane. Even if I talk you through everything, it's too quick and instinctual. Like, you need to learn how to do it. You can't. You don't have time. But you don't have to land it. You can just eject, right? That's the plan. And I'm like, okay, I like that. That's like a plausible enough. Okay, you can get him in the air. Landing's the hardest part. All he has to do is eject.
So long as Al shows up at the right time to help him get started.
Yes. Which is a fun reveal as well, because he kind of he sort of appears inside him and then sort of like pops out like a ghost.
Yeah, actually, I really like the effects in this for Al, because they're not always this good. I think this one especially is quite good.
They probably took more time on it because it's the pilot, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. There's also a weird effect where when Al first realizes that Sam doesn't know who he is or remembers anything, and he decides like, oh, I need to get back to the project, and he just like leaves, and you don't see it, but there's like an invisible door that he sort of opens and walks through, and that's not a thing that continues. Like, there is a doorway still, but like it's just a different kind of animation, so it's it's one of those things you notice when you go back and rewatch, like, oh, that was just a thing for this one episode.
Yeah. I love how you said you don't see it, but there's an invisible door. I'm like, yeah, the invisible part.
Well, it's a kind of a weird thing to describe, right? Because he kind of opens it and then partially disappears. So you see the line of where the door would be.
I would say that it's not so much that it's, I mean, it is an invisible door, but I would describe it as, imagine there was like Truman Show style, a fake like wall that was like an LED, right? A big screen that was the sky. But there was a door. So imagine someone, so you don't see a handle or anything, but someone opens it, so you see the rim of light around where the door opens, and he walks into that. That's what it looks like.
Do we see light? I don't even remember there being light.
There's a little bit. It's not a lot of light, but there's like a little rim of light.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe it's just a border for the effect more than anything else. But yeah, he opens the door and walks in, which,
Also, just Sam like calling him Albert is weird because he's Al. Always gets called Al. Again, but he keeps yelling Albert.
Well, he doesn't know him yet. He's not informal with him yet.
You're right. He's a bit more formal.
But even then, I don't think that's the intention necessarily. It may just be a case of this is a pilot kink where they hadn't settled yet that they were just going to always call him Al.
Yeah.
You know. So those are these little things that develop in the early part of a show that are fun to go back to and notice. Oh yeah, they called him Albert for like 2 episodes before they switched to Al.
It's not really a conversation I can have with you. You just kind of have to take my word for it.
What? No, I believe you.
Well, yeah, I know, but like it's not as interesting for you because you're not the one who's revisiting it. You're seeing it for the first time.
Yeah, but I don't need extra context to understand that they just usually call him Al after this. It's a pretty simple thing to understand.
Yeah, I know. It's just not a interesting fact for you, like it is for me.
That's okay. It's a different perspective. It's fine.
All right, I'll keep going then.
there's plenty in here of interest as a first time watch. It's okay if you have a few extra points to give from the other perspective. That's okay. One would argue that's part of the charm of doing it this way, where you've seen the whole thing and I haven't.
Yeah, I mean, Al eventually becomes famous for his wild outfits, and we get a little tease of it in this.
Oh, actually, this is a very minor nitpick, right? But see when he's wearing the silver jacket?
Love it.
Like, however they made it, like, there was so much noise coming off of it.
There's a lot of rubber on rubber or something. Like that squeaky leather feel or something that, like when you sit down in a leather chair.
I don't know if the way they made it, they just couldn't, like, get rid of it and they had to just accept it was there, or if they added it after the fact. Either way,
it's too much. I agree.
It's a different complaint one way or the other, but the end result's the same, where it's just all I could hear when he was talking, because it's a really good scene. It's the scene where he gives him his name, but every in between every other line you could hear the squeaking of the...
There's
it's like someone's got two balloons and they're squidging them together.
Yeah. I noticed it too, and I was like, man, they really needed to... I mean, it must have been a mic thing, because I don't think they would have purposely added that much.
Nah, probably not. They basically didn't realize how loud that jacket was going to be, and and this is the thing. To make it consistent, you have to accept that it's there, and maybe even add more to it in the shots that he's like, you don't pick it up, so that it's consistently. It's this weird thing where if there's some like, if let's say there's a background hum, you don't solve it by trying to remove it in the audio, unless you're going to ADR it just to remove it completely, because you're going to get fresh audio. Mm-hmm. What you actually do is add the same amount of background audio to the other shots so that it's there, because what's going to be distracting if it jumps in and out, that's what's going to sound bad. So one of the things you actually might do, especially if you're lower budget and can't like ADR things or reshoot things or whatever, is you just take some like static background noise at a location, so that if you have to, you can insert it into the other shots to make it all sound consistent, because consistency is better than it being inconsistent, but some of the shots are perfect. Like, you would rather have the consistent less than perfect the whole time.
Yeah, otherwise it'd just be so jarring.
Yeah, exactly. Which, if you want a good example of that, go watch Birdemic, because the sound edit in that is all over the place.
Plus, it's such a great movie.
And air quotes, great.
James Wan is a genius.
Right.
I can't wait to watch Birdemic 3. Sea Eagles.
I haven't seen the second one yet, but oh jeez.
Second one's actually quite good.
We'll see.
You know how, like, you know, when directors get a little too self-aware that people know that, and they try to play it off like, oh yeah, I always meant it to be a comedy, looking at you, Tommy Wiseau, and then they make another movie and they try to make it a comedy and it sucks. James Wang like can literally only make one type of film, and that's a James Wan film, and they're always gold. You're
saying that no matter how much people tell him this, he can't be self-aware?
Yes.
Which is probably the sign that he's a complete, like, narcissist. Just can't accept what people are telling him.
Well, that's how you get great art, though.
Yeah, fair. That's why these podcasts are so good.
I hope you're talking about yourself.
That was the implication, yes.
I think it's just that I like, you know, one of the characteristics of Al is his crazy outfits, and you get a little bit of a tease of it here, even if it's a kind of an annoying tease. But it's kind of fun to see somebody who just like dresses like what they think the future 90s, just not too distant future, is going to be, and just wear it with such confidence, even though they actually look kind of wild.
Can I just say as well, one thing that it oddly got very right is that Al's device looks a lot like a smartphone.
Yeah, don't get used to it though, because it changes like a lot.
Yeah, I think I was aware of that, but like when you pulled it out when he was talking to him around the fishing scene in this, it really looked like someone just holding a smartphone. It was a bit thinner.
He was tapping. It wasn't like using a stylus or something, you know.
But even when you get like a glimpse of it, and obviously it's just static because it's not real, but like it looks like someone's like text message list. That's what it looked like when you get a glimpse of it, and I was like, oh, it looks like a real thing from present day. That's wild. It's kind of funny. I mean, and yes, I know there's like a more cube light looking thing that he gets at one point because it was brought up in the new show and stuff. But but no. So yeah, I mean, the actual, obviously he thinks that, or he hopes that it'll leap after he sleeps. That doesn't happen, and then it's like, okay, maybe you have to fix something So we'll try again on Tuesday. He's like, but that's after Monday, and Monday's when I need to fly this plane. I don't want to do that. So we get obviously the build up to that. And then the big thing is that not only does he survive that when originally Tom didn't, is that the wife goes into early labour, and originally the baby was going to die too. It was going to be a stillborn birth. And he obviously is able to use his medical expertise to like educate these 50s characters to solve the problem. And it's then that he's able to leap. It's right after he does that. The kid throws the baseball up when he gives him the good news, and then it transitions to the baseball scene, which was a fun transition. And then the end of the baseball scene, he transitions to what I'm going to call that early scene in Indiana Jones, the first one, where all the girls are clearly got the hots for the teacher, because he turns around, he's got the tweed jacket on, and all of the women are all just like, teaches, sir.
Yeah.
How can we get that A?
There's also an interesting thing I didn't notice until this watch, where like the first time he goes to sleep, and there's like this almost looks like a dream sequence where the camera is like flying through and going into the room and then flying back into the air. And it's like, is he having a nightmare about the flight that he has to do the next day? But then Al kind of confirms that, no, we tried to retrieve you last night, and that's what that was. That was just the project trying to retrieve him. Actually,
just to correct, guys, this is important. It's actually flipped it. It comes out of the room first, and then like it's like he's leaping out, and then it reverses and goes back in, like it didn't work.
Like nope, and then he says it's his fault because he told people with that who he was, or he tried to tell the wife, Peg, like who he really was, and she just wasn't buying it, and that's why he couldn't leap.
Yeah, so. There's a lot of good stuff in this. I think it's a little bit long in the tooth at times, where like there's like scenes at a barbecue where he's playing catch with the boy, and just other little bits like that where this is a little extraneous, where you've already set up the idea that like he doesn't know things, it's just another example of him not knowing what a plane thing's called. That's already kind of been established at this point. So there's a few extra scenes here or there that probably could have been trimmed to tighten up. But here's the question. Actually, I had no idea what this is. So when the plane's flying over for a test flight early on, it happens twice because it happens again later on in the episode. There's like an appliance in the kitchen that shakes next to the wife. I have no idea what this thing was, because it's obviously a 50s design of something. I don't know if it was like a washing machine and that's what they look like in the 50s, or if it was something else. But I legitimately don't know what it was.
I don't know. I don't recall seeing that.
It was like a cylinder type electrical device that was shaking because
it was large?
It was large, yeah. It was kind of like moving towards, and she sort of kicked it back.
Maybe it's a washer then.
Maybe it was like well, it wasn't shaking because it was on. It was shaking because the plane was like causing the tremors, effectively.
I don't know. I'd have to revisit that. I'm not sure what it was you're looking at.
If you told me it was a giant vacuum cleaner, I'd also believe that, and that's why it was so easy to move, because it obviously isn't a big heavy stationary thing. But I did not know. I don't know what this thing was, and I think it's just because it's like a 50s version of something that obviously we all are used to.
Yeah.
But I don't know what this is. This was the opposite of seeing cool future tech. I was like, what is this ancient device?
Didn't even notice.
Yeah. I don't know. It was just a thought I had.
I appreciate that there's appliances and stuff that feel genuinely 50s. Unlike the Tupperware from the new show.
I mean, Tupperware is pretty low on the list for getting things right, but yeah.
It's mostly the hair. Yeah, the hair is just ridiculous.
Yeah, the hair adds a lot to this to make it feel like the time period, the clothes, and they get away with a lot because they've set it in like a sort of like really desolate, it's they're out in the desert, like near an Air Force
like
base.
Mojave or something. Yeah. It feels like that area. It's where they do a lot of testing up there anyway, like Mojave Desert and Lancaster in California. So
they get away with like not having to like disguise that many places, so inherently it just if you tell me this is the 50s with a few 50s cars and some haircuts, and I'm like, yeah, it feels like it. But yeah, it's good. So yeah, is there anything else you would like to add?
I'm just so excited that we're going to be talking about Quantum Leap.
Yeah, honestly, it's got some pilot shakiness and there's definitely some kinks, but like I can already feel the chemistry between the two leads. I already feel like I think Sam's like an inherently good character that I want to root for. and that Al's a fun character that's going to be there to bounce off of him. Like, those key elements are already there after this episode, even if it's not the most perfect episode. But there's a couple of emotional beats.
No, it's not like the most exciting leap or anything like that, even though there is planes involved and stuff like that.
But there's a couple of emotional beats at the end of the episode that I do think hit fairly well, and that's something. That for a pilot, that is well worth something. So, yeah, that's good.
And you're going to get lots of cool guest stars, like next week's episode.
Is Terry Hatcher in it?
Yes.
She's in the photo.
Did you already see that?
She's in the photo on IMDb. That's why.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one thing that I do on Twilight Zone episode reviews, and I do it with Star Trek with Connor, is we look ahead to the next one and just read what the IMDb description is, just to sort of tease what it is. And I think especially it works with us because much like, it's a very different way of doing it, but much like Twilight Zone, there's kind of a tease for the next episode because we see where he leaps to. Although Tara has explained to me that the order is not always going to work out. So just to be clear here, we are going to, just so there's no confusion and just so that there's the same list that everyone can work from, we are going to follow the order that is on IMDb. Regardless of where we're getting the show, regardless of what streaming service has it and what their order is, we're following the order in IMDb because there's different orders, and even the more correct order might not necessarily always line up with what the ending is to the next episode because of like how they originally did things. So IMDb, that is the order we're going to follow no matter what. So that's the plan. All right. So next up is Star-Crossed, June 15th, 1972. At a small Ohio college, Sam Beckett is a literature professor who must discourage an enormous advances of students that he finds the woman who left him at the altar. And finds the woman who left him at the altar. Wait, as in Sam's? Wait, is this that Sam's past it's referring to, or the character's past that he's jumped into? I'm confused. Sam hopes that resolving her conflicts with her father will prevent her from deserting him. Well, obviously, because you've seen it. But
yeah, do you want me to say?
No, leave it open for. But like, honestly, reading this, I'm not sure if he's running into like a woman from his youth, because in the 70s he would have probably been in college or high school himself in the time period. Mm-hmm. So yeah, he was born in 53, so yeah, he'd have been college aged at this time, 72. So I genuinely don't know if it's like setting up someone he in later life, not in 72, but in later life, he's going to meet and almost marry, or if it's referring to someone just that this character. So the way you're looking at me suggesting that it's Sam's future ex, but don't tell me. We'll find out next week. It makes sense, if it is his past though, and it's his ex-girlfriend or future ex-girlfriend, it would make sense that they're doing that in the second episode just to like set up that we can run into someone that's related to him directly, someone from his past that'll tie into him. Yes, but Terry Hatcher's in there, so that's cool. I assume she's the prominent character. She's the ex. She
is.
Yes, because she's the biggest. I mean, she's not a big name yet, but she's about to become a big name. So I guess that's just my assumption.
Yeah.
So
she did that one episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation.
She did. And she was in Tango and Cash.
The outrageous Okana.
Something like that. Yeah, she was in Tango and Cash around this time as well. I want to say that was like 1989, 1990. But yeah, so that's what's coming up next time. Obviously, this was a pretty long discussion because this was the first episode, so there was a lot to get into. But
yeah, it was kind of all over the place too. But I suspect that's just because it's a new show, so we won't be as all over the place.
Yeah, I mean this was jumping around just in how it introduced the characters and stuff. But I feel like typical episodes we're going to talk a bit more, in order of what's going on in the plot and the leap. And talk about it. Here it was like a lot of back and forth about the characters, their introductions, so on and so on. So yeah, we'll get into it. So yeah, I really care about Sam. Actually no, I think that'll be my outro line. Actually, I've got an outro line. I've got an outro line planned now. All right. Thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully you like the idea of us working through Quantum Leap from the perspective of someone who's never seen it, and from someone who's not an old fan, because you literally just done it this year, but you have watched the whole show.
Yeah,
so
it's all very recent in here, so yeah. I feel like an expert.
So hopefully you like this idea and you'll join us on a weekly basis. Whilst the new show's on break, once the new show's back, this will go on hiatus whilst the new show's back on. But it's not coming back till January, so we're getting at least about 6 weeks, 7 weeks maybe of this. So hopefully that sounds like fun. So most of season 1, funnily enough. We'll almost be done the season, and we'll have to go on a break annoyingly. But that is the plan. So let us know what you think of the first episode of Quantum Leap in the comments below. I guess it's episode 1 and 2. I think because IMDb numbers the next one as episode 3, I think I will also number it as episode 3. Because sometimes it's like murky, like do you count that double pilot as 2 episodes or as 1?
Yeah.
But I think in this case, most seem to list the next one as episode 3, so that's how I'll do it too. So yeah, join us for that. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications. All of that does help, and of course you can help us even more if you go to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us over there on a monthly basis, or you can of course hit the super thanks button as a one-time thing on YouTube. But any and all support is obviously greatly appreciated. But that is us, so thank you very much for joining us for Quantum Leap. Keep watching fun shows like Quantum Leap, and I really like Sam. I hope one day he makes it home.